society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
I think a new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall never surrender.
Good day, everybody. It's the 28th of November 2015. This is UCY.tv. I'm your host, Walter, from Holland, at UCY.tv. If you go there, you can find the chat link and lots of other stuff like archives and such. In the chat are already some people like Aithawks, Cap, Grump, JJ, Jules, Otto, and Vince. Welcome everybody. How you doing? We had like sunny weather today after a week of bad weather, wet snow and stuff. Scratch the windows before I go to work. But today was good. So how are you holding out in this happening we call reality? We're so far from it that I've heard that there's a new philosophical idea being put forward, and these group of philosophers claim that this is the age where reality is lost. And I thought about that a little bit, and I'm thinking directly of Kant and others who have instilled a philosophy where you cannot be sure of anything, which is a fallacy in itself, because if that is the case, how can you be sure of that? And they will go, oh, you can't be sure about that either. Okay, so then the whole position falls apart. Right, so, but that has influenced science and other fields. And now people don't have a philosophy on which they can base their actions when it comes to if you want to change reality. Right. Yes, Vince in the chat. It's 4 p.m. in the Netherlands. So, although I'm not in agreement with everything that objectivism holds, I do think that even though Aristotle is not one who was honest, maybe a bit more than Plato, by showing us a better way to gauge the things around you we call reality. Ayn Rand based her philosophy also on what Aristotle said. But I still consider, and I haven't found one yet actually, though I'm not a reader of much philosophers, but I still consider them all to be traitors. Because they don't tell you about the illusion of authority. Alright, so. And then, in those days in Greece it was pretty open. There's masters and slaves and everybody knew it. Later that became not doable anymore. But that's one of the biggest things that I found to be important when it comes to creating a reality that is livable. Right? It's the illusion of authority, like Larkin Rose explains it. That's very important. It's one of the most important ways in which masses of people are controlled, because they have this belief in authority. It's one of the most deep-rooted beliefs on which many others are based, and Larkin has explained that also in a video. I thought that was one of the most important things. It's a lack of critical thinking which comes from the belief in authority. Well, somebody else will think for me. Somebody else will decide what to do for me. So even critical thinking is based in that belief. That there's no need to think. And that's also what's permeating the philosophy today of many people. There's no need to think. Oh, we'll just watch CNN and they'll tell us what to think. Yeah. All right. There's a link I'm going to put in the chat. Got this from Tragedy and Hope. Plutocracy, political repression in the USA. Goes back pretty long. Well, for as fast as time goes today, one might say. The changes are so immense that it seems like time is passing faster. The picture you see with this video looks like what, 1910 or something? Not sure. But that's one recommended. I'm gonna watch it myself later. I just got it off of the Tragedy and Hope chat page. Always lots of good links in there. And I've got for the top of the hour some music by Anima, You Are the Truth. 6 minutes long. It's from Free Music Archive. It's specially made for podcasters and such. So that's at freemusicarchive.org. Alrighty. Let's see. I had this open for today, discussion on logic. You can also contact me via Skype, Solvinur, Solvinur, if you want to be on air. and discuss anything you like. That's just fine. This is an analysis or a synthesis of a body of knowledge. Discussion on logic. All right, so it's the second part. Because the first part is that body of knowledge, or the body of data, building blocks. Good morning, Hopper. That you've accumulated, and now you're trying to understand it via logic. A definition of fact. A concept or a word which corresponds to the reality that is apparent to our five senses. Right now, I got a little bit of trouble with that being, named a lot in the trivium as your means of getting data, your means of getting building blocks, your grammar. Those are your five senses. I think there's more than that. There seems to be, at least, and there needs to be more study into this field, but there seems to be a way of connecting with reality that is not done with your senses as we normally know them. Sometimes people call it sixth sense. Huh? Logic is the method for thinking correctly, that is, thinking without contradiction. This is pure Ayn Randian, because she came up with that definition. Think without contradiction, especially the without contradiction part. The art of non-contradictory identification. Aristotelian, Ayn Randian like. Alright, that's what I like about this. You need to identify things first as being in reality before you can take adequate action. And remember that adequate action is also rhetoric, the third part of the trivium. After a body of knowledge is gathered and properly arranged through grammar, the topic or proposition must be understood. When all the stated contradictions have been removed from the proposition by subjecting it to logic, this work is called proof, the proposition is said to be understood. All the relationships within the proposition and to reality are in concurrence. There remain no contradictions. All of the statements within the propositions are related to facts, are related facts. The description in the previous paragraph is an awkward way of stating the logical law of non-contradiction. Presented figuratively, an existent cannot be A and non-A at the same time and in the same respect. For example, a fire truck cannot be red and non-red at the same time. It might be painted another color at another time, but it is now red. The red color might appear as a shade of gray in a black and white photograph, but in respect to the normal human eye, it is still red. This may not seem remarkable, yet it is the key to grasping knowable reality. In the objective universe, direct observations tell us that there exist absolutely no contradictions. Alright, so ever since Gino Denning made that clear to me that there are no contradictions in nature, I had to think about that because I never, looked at it that way, and I haven't found one yet. Anyway, so. And it seems illogical also that there be contradictions in nature. It can't exist. Yeah. Everything is in harmony. Yeah, well, I wouldn't use that word harmony myself. I think nature is very brute, and that may be harmonious in a universal way, but not like how we humans look at it. Contradictions exist only within the mind of man through the misuse of free will, misinterpretations. Logic is meant to minimize these misinterpretations. Logic is the field originally identified and described in the Western world by Aristotle of Stagira, the philosopher. That's what he was known as. And arranged as the organon, meaning the organ of knowledge. It is, even among his other intellectual feats, his greatest achievements. It is man's method of passing from the known to the unknown, thereby making it known ad infinitum. It is the diagram to the understanding of new knowledge. As logic concerns itself with establishing the non-contradictory, it provides a functional definition of truth, a proposition in correspondence with objective factual reality. Below are diagrams relating personal belief and objective reality to the position of truth. There's like a couple of circles overlapping each other, two circles overlapping each other, one reality and one belief, and then in the part where the two circles overlap, there's a smaller circle within that, and that's truth. Logic consists of four basic elements. The informal logical fallacies, the rules of definition, the rules of deductive reasoning, and a guide for inductive reasoning. The common informal logical fallacies, so-called because these mistakes or intentional deceptions made in arguments exists in either form of reasoning, deductive or inductive. Familiarity with these 20+ fallacies will aid when one is presented with outside arguments or one's own thought processes which seem on first glance to be valid, but something intuitively does not quite fit. The something which does not fit can often be segregated and identified as commonly fallacious. That is, these flawed contradictory propositions are so commonly used that a list has been compiled to apply as a shortcut in dismissing their content in logical argument, reasoned analysis, and synthesis. Now, if you notice that someone is using a fallacy, that doesn't mean that his argument is invalid. It just means that you need to take a closer look and remove anything that isn't supposed to be there and check the actual claim being made. So don't jump to conclusions when you spot a fallacy. Just spot it and that's it. It doesn't mean that the conclusion is wrong. And, when we're watching TV or something, mass media like, then, yeah, it's probably more definitely intentional deception. There are different kinds of groups of fallacies. Fallacies of relevance, emotion, presumption. Let's see what we can find here. These are fallacies of relevance. Is it relevant? Somebody presents an argument and somebody else responds to it, but his argument has no relevance whatsoever upon the argument being made by the other side. So is it relevant? Is one of the things that I would have come up with. It says here, appeal to inappropriate authority. Argumentum ad verecundiam. Simply, because a recognized authority presents an argument does not necessarily mean it is valid. This is by far the most commonly occurring fallacy. All right, we've gone over in the past the different kinds of appeal to authorities that should raise some alarm bells, like unnamed authority or an expert on religion commenting on economy, for instance. There is appeal to pity under the fallacies of relevance. It's called ad misericordiam. There is appeal to emotion, ad populum, apparently. A and B, prestige jargon, use of technical wording to intimidate. And B, use of derogatory humor to intimidate. Appeal to ridicule. Appeal to force, which is called ad baculum. Irrelevant conclusion. Ignoratio elenchi. That's an argument from incessant repetition. A, irrelevant conclusion. A, argument from incessant repetition. Ad nauseam. Mass media advertisement. Argument from ignorance. Onus of proof principle. That one is sometimes hard to spot when used against you. Argument from ignorance. Ignorance of the fact that a negative cannot be proven, or that the proposition cannot be called proven due to the lack of positive proof. Ad ignorantium. Argument against a man is called ad hominem, abusive and circumstantial. The opposite of Verecundium. An argument is not necessarily invalid because it is proposed by a particular individual. The argument should be judged on its own merits, its own content. Something like, don't kill the messenger. Then there's fallacies of presumption. Begging the question. It's petitio principii, also known as circular reasoning. B, a restatement, saying it in different words, saying the same thing in different words. And somebody claims something, and then you ask, well, why this or why that? Or how do you get this conclusion? How do you get this idea? And then they just repeat what they said, but with different words. Right? That's also begging the question. B is arbitrary redefinition, is also known as restatement. Arbitrary redefinition. Then C, complex question. Question asked in such a way as to presuppose truth of some conclusion buried in the question. And the famous example is, Joe, did you stop beating your wife yet? Something like that. Leading questions. Non sequitur, it doesn't follow. A, false cause. Effect and cause are not in alignment. That's also something that's been under attack in the philosophical milieu, that there's no such thing as cause and effect. It seems to me that that's self-evident, that there is such a thing as cause and effect. One after this, therefore, because of this. Then brackets open, luck, superstition, etc. Brackets closed, is known as post hoc ergo propter hoc. Fallacies of ambiguity. Interesting. Equivocation. What's going on? Bazaar! Okay. I'm just reading up on what happened in the chat. Hey JJ, what's up, buddy? I heard you were at Will Truth on air, I think. What was it? With Vince? How was that, buddy? Off-ended. Over the top. Off-ended. What's this? Vince. Commonly spoken at high volume by idiots to divert attention from their lack of intelligence. Their inability to cope with the real world and function in normal society. No, those last two words. What you call that? Oxymoron, I think, right? I'm not sure. Yeah. I really don't know, but normal society, if you are able to function as a, quote, normal human being in a normal society, then you're insane. But, you know, yeah. So, I don't know, where did that come from, Vince? Offended. Yeah. I'm rolling a ciggy, guys. The newspapers here in the Netherlands, one of them heading first page, big letters, Dutch are scared. Really? I didn't notice that. No, nobody was really scared. Yeah, there was another thing in there, Vince, that I was like, huh? But never mind. Juiste milieu. Juste milieu, meaning of middle way or happy medium. Oh. Is a term that has been used to describe centrist political philosophies that try to find a balance between extremes. Artistic forms that try to find the middle ground between the traditional and the modern. Yeah, so that's like trying to influence shadows on the wall in Plato's cave. Even the balance between two extremes is extreme because the society that we live in is insane. You see? That's why all of these philosophers are like, well, maybe not knowingly, but I would call them traitors if they knew. Because truth is one of the most important things to a philosopher. Yeah, I thought that was, yeah, so it is an oxymoron. Yeah, normal society, good one. I thought that was Dutch. I misread. I read juiste milieu, but just, and it sounds like French or something. I don't know. Joop, joop, joop. Let's see. Some people joined. 8 Hawks, did I miss you at the start? And Jane, welcome. Hopper, Grump, Dan, JJ, Otto, Vince, Dan, yeah, he's also there. All right. Where were we? Equivocation, yeah, fallacies of ambiguity, all these words that are not common to me. Ambiguous and equivocation, using the same term in arguments inconsistently, right? So it's like changing the definition of the term that you're using within one argument. That's not allowed. Equivocation, using the same term in arguments inconsistently, in different senses. This is another very common used fallacy, especially in legal, political, and ecclesiastical debate. Intense training is required to detect this fallacy as it is very subtle. Yeah. Amphiboly, undue ambiguity owing to imprecise or improper grammar. Accent. Accent. Applying inappropriate emphasis to a particular term in a statement. Composition. Reasoning from attributes of the parts of a whole to the whole itself. Right, remember why that was not allowed? Compositioning, reasoning from attributes of the parts of a whole to the whole itself. It's like if we would like to make a Dutch football team and we would pick out the 11 best players, like happens with competitions and such. Then you might say, well, that's the best team. Well, no, not necessarily. These people haven't played together, might not have played together forever. And so they don't know too much about each other. They haven't functioned as a team yet. So, and the time that they must do is pretty short, because it's like one competition every 2 years, I think, even if you get far enough into the competition, European and World Championships. Right, so they don't have much time to train together. Right, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the best team. A team who is well played, who has played a lot together, who's played in well, I don't know how to say that in English, who can count on people to be somewhere if you launch a pass. You know that, you don't have to look. That might be a better team. Alright, so reasoning from attributes of the parts to a whole. And there's division. Reasoning that what is true of the whole must be true of the parts. So that's like the other way around, right? A list of the major fallacies, along with some of their Latin names, is provided so that you may perform an internet word search or refer to any introduction to classical logic text under informal logical fallacies to enumerate and explain the particulars on this or any of the following topics. A word search on any proper name or technical term mentioned in this letter might further clarify the included concepts. I recommend this element be studied and understood before advancing to the other three, as it is one of the most easily comprehensible and useful in day-to-day life. So he mentioned the 4 things that logic is supposed to consist of. And he recommends we do the logical fallacies first. The contemporary thinker Carl Sagan, who I don't like, called this element the baloney detection kit. Aristotle called it the refutations of the sophists. Now that sounds much better, doesn't it? Even today. In referring to a philosophically skeptical school of thought which originated in his era. In referring to a philosophically, so one can detect and refute all manner of present-day sophistry and baloney as experienced in mass media, advertising, journalism, politics, from legal and medical professionals, and even intelligently question some assumptions in the subjects, history or science as they have been presented to us. Just to name a few applications, he says. Right, so this tells you something about how many fields have been infiltrated to control you. See? Because these are all intentional fallacies or lies by mass media, journalism, politics, medical professions, science, just to name a few, he says. There is no one definite list of fallacies. The fallacies listed above, mostly Aristotle's, are usually considered the major fallacies. There are other, more contemporary lists, including the one to follow, which duplicates some fallacies already mentioned. Alright. The following are suggested as tools for testing arguments and detecting fallacies or fraudulent arguments. Alright, we will do that, but first I want to do, I came up with this like some while ago, but now I forgot. I think it's Bob fallacy or something. Not quite sure. There's also another one that no, this is not what I was looking for. What was it? It's something about it's a game that has fallacies. No, but I don't remember the name anymore. Eek. You guys remember? Anybody in the chat? I've pasted it before. Probably don't have it bookmarked on this machine. Blah blah blah. Let's see what we can do. Open this. Yeah, I think we should do this one. This is 2 minutes and 7 seconds. And then we need to spot as many fallacies as possible. Alright? So you all get brownie points, of course, if you are the first to mention. And this is from 2007, Greenpeace. Are you ready? You got pen and paper? I'll give you guys some time to get pen and paper, so you can write down the fallacies that you spotted. The other side is nice too. It has a statement, and then you can choose between 5 different fallacies that this is supposed to be, and there's a timer running. So the faster you get it, the more points you score. Alright, if you needed pen and paper, you should have gotten it by now. Let's see if we can play this. Let's see. Let me know if sound is bad.
The scientific community released a report that proves beyond a doubt that the Earth is getting warmer. This global warming is caused by things you grown-ups do, and by the things you don't. If drastic measures aren't taken soon, by the time I grow up, there won't be any fish left in the sea. Rainforests and clean air will be a thing of the past. The polar ice caps will be gone. Oceans will rise. Entire countries will disappear. Life will change in ways you can't even imagine. There could be famine, worldwide epidemics. Life expectancy will be lower. And we're not just talking about the future. We're talking about my future. But this is no surprise. You adults have known about this for years. And though you could have done something about it, you haven't. You can say, it's not my problem. You can say, I won't be around in 50 years. But from now on, you can't say I didn't know. Starting today, the lines are drawn. You have to choose sides. Either you're for my future, or you're against it. You're a friend, or you're an enemy. I may just be a kid today, but tomorrow will be different. This is the last time I'll be talking to you adults. You've had your chance to fix this problem. Now we have ours. We won't be cute. We won't be patronized. And we will not be denied our future.
Alright. That was Greenpeace 2007. Unbelievably how many there were in there. Let's see if I can paste that into the chat as well, in case you want to see that again. Here we go. Copy that. Hartstikke. Die weg. Ik weet niet meer. I don't remember exactly what the other one is yet. But he also looks very angry. Yeah. Alright, so next I'll try to remember, but maybe next week we can do a little bit of that game. Alright, so the following are suggested as tools for testing arguments and detecting fallacious or fraudulent arguments. Wherever possible, there must be independent confirmation of the facts. Encourage substantive debate on the evidence by knowledgeable proponents of all points of view, with the object being to find contradictions within the propositions under examination. My experience is also that I spot a lot of contradictions just by asking for definitions of terms. Arguments is the next one. Arguments from authority carry little weight. And it says even in brackets open, in science there are no authorities. The next one is spin more than one hypothesis. Don't simply run with the first idea that caught your fancy. Try not to get overly attached to a hypothesis just because it's yours. Quantify wherever possible. If there is a chain of argument, every link in the chain must work. No contradictions. Ask whether the hypothesis can, at least in principle, be falsified, that's shown to be false by some ambiguous test. In other words, is it testable? Can others duplicate the experiment and get the same result? Then there's additional issues. Conduct control experiments, especially double-blind experiments where the person taking measurements is not aware of the test and control subjects. Check for confounding factors. Separate the variables. Next is common fallacies of logic and rhetoric. Well, we all know ad hominem, attacking the arguer and not the argument. Argument from authority. And then again he goes about the science. It says brackets open. In science there are no authorities, only objective facts. Brackets close. Next is argument from adverse consequences. Putting pressure on the decision maker by pointing out dire consequences of an unfavorable decision. That's argument from adverse consequences. Next is appeal to ignorance. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I think this is what Rumsfeld gave as his second answer when he was asked about if he knew that there were actually weapons of mass destructions in Iraq. So what he does there is avoid. It's his obligation to prove that. And then he says absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Right? That's not allowed. The negative holds the field. Right? Because a negative cannot be proven. Special pleading is the next, typically referring to God's will, usually, apparently. Then there is begging the question. Assuming an answer in the way the question is phrased, or assuming a fact in the way the question is phrased, I would say. Observational selection, counting the hits and forgetting the misses. Observational selection. Statistics of small numbers. Yeah, he also said that, Jane, as an answer to the same question, I believe. That was his first answer, if I remember correct. I'm not sure. Others have commented on this as being pure garbage. Yeah. The whole idea of no is pretty difficult for me as a philosopher. the best thing I can do so far is that if you really want to know something, then it has to have a relation to reality. Right? Just like words speak truth when there is a link with the words to reality. But figuring out what reality is, I'm still not there, it's still making the first step in philosophy, metaphysics, or ontology. I'm still thinking that it's much bigger than an objectivist would define reality. Alright, next is statistics of small numbers, such as drawing conclusion from inadequate sample size. Misunderstanding the nature of statistics. President Eisenhower expressing astonishment and alarm that fully half of all Americans have below average intelligence when expressed as a mean average. He mistakenly supposed it was an arithmetic average. Inconsistency. Military expenditures based on worst-case scenarios, but scientific projections on environmental dangers thriftily, never seen that word, ignored because they are not proved. It's a non sequitur, it doesn't follow. Is the next. The logic falls down. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. It happened after, so it was caused by. That's confusing cause and effect. A comet appearing in the sky coincides with the start of a drought and is mistakenly thought to be the cause of the drought. Things like that. Oh, let me light my cigarette here, guys. Next is controlled opposition. Staging opposition to an issue in order to claim the prearranged outcome had been tested by objective debate. The American political structure, which declares having two independent parties but has only one, big government. Controlled opposition. Meaningless question. What happens when an irresistible force meets an immovable object? Excluded middle, considered only the two extremes in range of possibilities, making the other side look worse than it really is. Short-term versus long-term, a subset of excluded middle. Why pursue fundamental science when we have so huge a budget deficit? Slippery slope, a subset of excluded middle. Unwarranted exploration of the effects. Give an inch and they will take a mile. Confusion of correlation and causation. Straw man. Caricaturing. Stereotyping. Opposition to make it easier to attack. Right? They rephrase your argument in a way that it doesn't look, it isn't your argument, but it just looks like it. And then attack that. Suppressed evidence or half-truths is another one to look out for. And the last is weasel words and phrases, for example, use of euphemisms for war, such as police action, to get around limitations on presidential powers. An important art, it says here, an important art of politicians is to find new names for institutions which under old names have become odious to the public. Alright. I'm gonna play some music from freemusicarchive.org. You Are Truth by Anima. And I'll try to make some coffee in the meantime. See you guys in, I think it's 6 minutes or something. Be right back. Alright. Welcome back, everybody. That was Anima, You Are Truth from freemusicarchive.org. I found that website, Don't Fallacy Me. And there's a couple of things here that you could choose from. Is it begging the question, red herring, biased generalization, appeal to novelty, special pleading, or appeal to consequences of a belief? Which one is this? Bill and Jane are married. Both Bill and Jill are married. Both Bill and Jill have put in a full day at the office. Their dog, Rover, has knocked over all the plants in one room and has strewn the dirt all over the carpet. When they return, Bill tells Jill that it is her job to clean up after the dog. When she protests, he says that he has put a whole day at the office and is too tired to clean up after the dog. So what is this? Begging the question, red herring, biased generalization, appeal to novelty, special pleading, or appeal to consequences of a belief? Which one is Bill pulling off here? Guys in the chat, any suggestions that I can fill in? Die kan weg. Can we go to the PDF? Let's see what we can do here. Coffee. Rules of definition. The method by which to isolate the essence of a word, concept. Definition is the heart of logic. In the West, the philosopher Socrates, the father of definition, first recognized the need to establish common conceptual ground in argumentation and communication. Socrates' emphatic prescription to clear the muddle, contradiction, and confusion of men's mind was to define your terms. Terms being used synonymously with words in this case. The Socratic method consists of defining all terms within an argument or a proposition until there are no contradictions or inconsistencies within it. If inconsistencies are still present, the argument is considered to be an error. And then it says brackets open, the negative holds the field in logic. Ad ignorantium. Aristotle, hold on, I like my ciggy here. Need to get a better lighter. There we go. Aristotle later discussed the notions of providing a positive statement with positive terms, describing what a concept is, not what it is not, where possible. Alright, apparently, for instance, when breaking down the word sovereign, in Greek, it meant not a slave. And so that was the way to describe that kind of position. Not a slave. Free means not a slave. Where were we? He also made use of genera and species, general and specific commonalities, to place the term being defined into a classification with other similar terms, and differentia, distinctions, to display the defined term's unique individuality within the class. Alright, so it looks like within a definition there should be two things, genera and species. Now I don't remember exactly, but we did talk about this with Gino Denning, which is on YouTube. Gino Denning, Solvinur, there's more about this. This seeks a reckoning which is not too broad, not too narrow, too circular, or too vague for the term. It is this human ability to have awareness of abstract similarities among existents, or awareness of universals. In the lexicon of philosophy, which is another unique feature of our conceptual capacity, care must also be taken to avoid making conflicting statements within the same definition. Hi there, Tomato and Jane, Dale and C, Dale Nick. The world's first 3D printed revolver in action, from blacklistednews.com. Do you want me to read that on air, Dale? Did anybody make any suggestions as to what kind of fallacy that was? No. Okay. The next is, the study of this element seems to enhance both intellectual discernment or judgment, to find meaning and value judgment, to find, of course, value, to accurately evaluate. The following two elements are concerned with the two things the human mind does, or in fact can do, while thinking. One is deduce, that's analyze, mentally taking things apart, or to induce, which is synthesize, mentally combining and putting things together, or generalizing. It is crucial to understand these simple definitions. Many cultural factions try to unnecessarily complicate and confuse this issue. So this is deductive and inductive reasoning, right? Also in that same video on YouTube with Gino Denning. The rules of deductive reasoning. Mentally taking things apart. The process of passing from known general principles to particular cases in cognition. From the base of immediate logical inference, which derives a conclusion from a single antecedent statement or implication. The tri-termed syllogism, connected discourse, was described and fully explored by Aristotle. A valid middle term is connected to two previously accepted and valid general terms, major and minor premises, and serves as a conclusion in deducing syllogistically. Right? It's a three-step process. The Indians from India, they had two more steps added to that. It came before that. I think it was theorem and reason was before that. Before the premises. Theorem and reason. The process of coming to a valid conclusion usually follows a spectrum of evidence. The first conclusion is that of a possible. There is some amount of evidence for the conclusion, but not a preponderance of evidence. The next level is that of the probable. There is a preponderance or a majority of evidence for the conclusion. The final level is that of certainty. All of the evidence points to the conclusion and there is no evidence against it. The evidence is conclusive. This is the most demanding of all the elements to study because an exhaustive amount of technicality is known about it. So I will not pursue any detail here. It advises us to refer to text or internet. If you want to know more about deductive reasoning. Then there is a guide for inductive reasoning. Mentally putting things together or forming valid generalization. The process of passing from particular instances to forming valid general principles in cognition. This is the primary channel to new knowledge. Aristotle provided a guide for this category of reasoning rather than set rules, because the ancients did not have a valid and complete understanding of concept formation, and we do not have a firm grasp of the process of concept formation to this day. Axiomatic induction, which defined sensible, that's via your five senses, self-evident, irreducible axioms like existence, identity, consciousness, was known to the ancients, and they had what was termed perfect or enumerative induction, which was, hypothetically, to observe every instance of a phenomenon before advancing a general statement or principle, essentially saying one has to know everything before knowing anything, an impossible task. However, this did lead to a synthesis called genuine induction, which could provide reasonable probabilities rather than certainties, after observing the consistent result in several instances. Not until Francis Bacon hinted at the fundamentals of the scientific method, and Isaac Newton used it to integrate the science of physics, was the confident declaration of a universal assumption realized. Francis Bacon. Let's copy. Open a new page. Paste. Go. Francis Bacon. Alright, so this is a Wikipedia page, and as long as you can, you know how to use Wikipedia, it's a good source. The way to use it is to scroll all the way down to the bottom, or not all the way, but a long way down. And there you will find a list of sources, and that's where you find your evidence. Alright. This article is about the philosopher and statesman for the 20th century painter. See Francis Bacon, that's somebody else. I'm thinking this is 15th century supposed to be. Sir Francis Bacon, 1st Viscount St. Alban, 22 January 1561 to 9th of April 1561 to 1626, was an English philosopher, statesman, scientist, jurist, orator, essayist and author. He served both as Attorney General and Lord Chancellor of England. After his death, he remained extremely influential through his works, especially as philosophical advocate and practitioner of the scientific method during the scientific revolution. Bacon has been called the father of empiricism. His work argued for the possibility of scientific knowledge based upon inductive and careful observation of events in nature. Most importantly, he argued this could be achieved by use of a skeptical and methodical approach whereby scientists aim to avoid misleading themselves. Hold on, guys. While his own practical ideas about such a method, the Baconian method, did not have a long-lasting influence, the general idea of the importance and possibility of a skeptical methodology makes Bacon the father of scientific method. This marked a new turn in the rhetorical and theoretical framework for science, the practical details of which are still central in debates about science and methodology today. Morning, Jules. Bacon was knighted in 1603 and created Baron Verulam in 1616 and Viscount St. Alban in 1621. As he died without heirs, both titles became extinct upon his death. Bacon died of pneumonia in 1626, with one account by John Aubrey stating he contracted the condition while studying the effects of freezing on the preservation of meat. Francis Bacon was born 22 January 1561 at York House near the Strand in London, the son of Sir Nicholas Bacon, by his second wife, Anne Cook Bacon, the daughter of the noted humanist Anthony Cook. His mother's sister was married to William Cecil, first Baron Burghley, making Burghley Bacon's uncle. Alright, I'm gonna pause this for a minute here and open the brain. Let's see. I should use another entrance to this for the search bar. And that other entrance is on the other page. I think here. Open that. Yes, here's the search bar. Francis Bacon. Search. Let's see what we can come up with. If anything. I think he should be in here. Doesn't seem to work. I spelled it right. Yeah. Okay, too bad. Nothing in the brain. That's odd. Should ask Richard about that. Something's wrong. So continuing, biographers believe that Bacon was educated at home in his early years, owing to poor health, which would plague him throughout his life. He received tuition from John Weisel, a graduate of Oxford, with a strong leaning towards Puritanism. He entered the Trinity College, Cambridge, on 5th April 1573 at the age of 12, living for 3 years there, together with his older brother Anthony Bacon, under the personal tutelage of Dr. John Whitcuft, future Archbishop of Canterbury. Bacon's education was conducted largely in Latin and followed the medieval curriculum. He was also educated at the University of Poitiers. It was at Cambridge that he first met Queen Elizabeth, who was impressed by his precocious intellect and was accustomed to calling him the young Lord Keeper. Right. His studies brought him to the belief that the methods and results of science, as then practiced, were erroneous. His reverence for Aristotle conflicted with his loathing of Aristotelian philosophy, which seemed to him barren, disputatious, and wrong in its objectives. A literal translation of the painting at right would be, if a worthy picture were given, I would prefer the mind. Note the first person, I, suggesting perhaps that Bacon himself said this, not the painter. On 27 June 1576, he and Anthony entered the Société Magistrorum or something like that, at Gray's Inn. A few months later, Francis Bacon went abroad with Sir Amias Paulet, the English ambassador at Paris, while Anthony continued his studies at home. The state of government and society in France under Henry III afforded him valuable political instruction. For the next 3 years he visited Blois, Poitiers, Tours, Italy, and Spain. During his travels, Bacon studied language, statecraft, and civil law while performing routine diplomatic tasks. On at least one occasion he delivered diplomatic letters to England for Washington, Berkeley, and Leicester pronounced Leicester, as well as for the Queen. The sudden death of his father in February 1579 prompted Bacon to return to England. Sir Nicholas had laid up a considerable sum of money to purchase an estate for his youngest son, but he died before doing so, and Francis was left with only a fifth of that money. Having borrowed money, Bacon got into debt. To support himself, he took up his residence in law at Gray's Inn in 1579, his income being supplemented by a grant of his mother, Lady Anne of the Manor of Marks in Essex, which generated a rent of £46. Parliamentarian. Bacon stated that he had 3 goals: to uncover truth, to serve his country, and to serve his church. He sought to further these ends by seeking a prestigious post. In 1580, through his uncle, Lord Berkeley, he applied for a post at court. Excuse me. He applied for a post at court that might enable him to pursue a life of learning, but his application failed. For 2 years he worked quietly at Gray's Inn, until he was admitted as an outer barrister in 1582. His parliamentary career began when he was elected MP for Bossigny, Cornwall, in a by-election in 1581. In 1584 he took his seat in Parliament in Melcombe, in Dorset, and in 1586 for Taunton. At this time he began to write on the condition of parties in the church, as well as on the topic of philosophical reform, in the lost tract Temporis Purtus Maximus. Yet he failed to gain a position that he thought would lead him to success. He showed signs of sympathy sympathy to Puritanism, attending to sermons of the Puritan chaplain of Gray's Inn, and accompanying his mother to the Temple Church to hear Walter Travers. This led to the publication of his earliest surviving tract, which criticized the English Church's suppression of the Puritan clergy. In the Parliament of 1586, he openly urged execution for the Catholic Mary, Queen of Scots. About this time, he again approached his powerful uncle for help. This move was followed by his rapid progress at the bar. He became bencher in 1586, and he was elected a reader in 1587, delivering his first set of lectures in Lent the following year. In 1589, he received the valuable appointment of reversion to the clerkship of the Star Chamber, although he did not formally take office until 1608. Star Chamber is interesting. That's a secret court. Let's see what it says. If you open that, Star Chamber was an English court of law which sat at the Royal Palace of Westminster from the late 15th century to the mid-17th century, and was composed of privy councillors and common law judges to supplement the judicial activities of the common law and equity courts in civil and criminal matters. The Star Chamber was established to ensure the fair enforcement of laws against socially and politically prominent people so powerful that ordinary courts would likely hesitate to convict them of their crimes. Right? That seems unlikely to me. This seems unlikely to me. I'd rather believe Alan Watt in this case, because I did a translation of one of his talks that are printed out in English, and I translated that to Dutch, and there came the word Star Chamber also, and this was years ago, tried to look up what it is, but I couldn't find anything that helped me understand this. So I don't know when this page was made. 15 was last modified a couple of days ago. I don't know when it was made. But so I emailed Alan and I said, I don't know what this Star Chamber is. Could you please give me an explanation so I can make an accurate translation into Dutch? And he explained to me that this was a secret court. Alright, so where were we? Francis Bacon, appointed to the clerkship, appointed of reversion to the clerkship of the Star Chamber. In 1588 he became MP for Liverpool and then for Middlesex in 1593. He later sat 3 times for Ipswich and once for Cambridge University. He became known as a liberal-minded reformer, eager to amend and simplify the law. Though a friend of the crown, he opposed feudal privileges and dictatorial powers. Well, that sounds like a contradiction, right? He spoke against religious persecution. He struck at the House of Lords in its usurpation of the money bills. He advocated for the Union of England and Scotland, which made him a significant influence towards consolidation of the United Kingdom. And he also advocated later on the integration of Ireland into the Union. Closer, bigger empire, right? Closer constitutional ties, he believed, would bring greater peace and strength to these countries. It was utter nonsense. This is just building the empire. That's what it is. The free trade empire. Bacon soon became acquainted with Robert Devereux, 2nd Earl of Essex, Queen Elizabeth's favourite. By 1591, he acted as the Earl's confidential advisor. In 1592, he was commissioned to write a tract in response to the Jesuit Robert Parsons' anti-government polemic, which he titled Certain Observations Made Upon a Libel, identifying England with the ideals of a democratic Athens against the belligerence of Spain. And there are sources apparently for that, if you want to check that out, under Attorney General number 16. Bacon took his third parliamentary seat for Middlesex when in February 1593 Elizabeth summoned Parliament to investigate a Roman Catholic plot against her. Bacon's opposition to a bill that would levy triple subsidies in half the usual time offended the Queen. Opponents accused him of seeking popularity, and for a time the court excluded him from favour. When the Attorney Generalship fell vacant in 1594, Lord Essex's influence was not enough to secure Bacon that office, which was given to Sir Edward Coke. Likewise, Bacon failed to secure the lesser office of Solicitor General in 1595, the Queen pointedly snubbing him by appointing Sir Thomas Fleming instead. To console him for these disappointments, Essex presented him with a property at Twickenham, which he sold subsequently for £1,800. In 1596, Bacon became Queen's Counsel, but missed the appointment of Master of the Rolls. During the next few years, his financial situation remained embarrassing. His friends could find no public office for him, and the scheme for retrieving his position by a marriage with the wealthy and young widow Lady Elizabeth Helton failed after she broke off their relations upon accepting marriage to Sir Edward Coke, a further spark of enmity between the men. In 1596, Bacon was arrested for debt. Afterward, however, his standing in the Queen's eyes improved gradually. Gradually, Bacon earned the strong standing of one of the learned counsels. Though he had no commission or warrant, he received no salary. His relationship with the Queen further improved when he severed ties with Robert Devereux, 2nd Earl of Essex, a shrewd move, as Essex was executed for treason in 1601. With others, Bacon was appointed to investigate the charges against Essex, his former friend and benefactor. A number of Essex's followers confessed that Essex had planned a rebellion against the Queen. Bacon was subsequently a part of the legal team headed by the Attorney General, Sir Edward Coke, at Essex's treason trial. After the execution, the Queen ordered Bacon to write the official government account of the trial, which was later published as a declaration of the practices and treasons attempted and committed by Robert, late Earl of Essex, and his accomplices against Her Majesty and her kingdoms. After Bacon's first draft was heavily edited by the Queen and her ministers. According to his personal secretary and chaplain William Rorley, as a judge, Bacon was always tender-hearted, looking upon the examples with the eye of severity, but upon the person with the eye of pity and compassion. Yeah. And also that he was free from malice, no revenger of injuries, and no defamer of any man. Oh, such a nice guy, huh? The succession of James I brought Bacon into greater favor. He was knighted in 1603, in another shrewd move. Bacon wrote his apologies in defense of his proceedings in the case of Essex, as Essex had favored James to succeed the throne. The following year, during the course of the uneventful first Parliament season, Bacon married Alice Barnham in June 1607. He was at last rewarded with the office of Solicitor General. The following year he began working as the clerkship of the Star Chamber. Despite a generous income, all debt still couldn't be paid. He sought further promotion and wealth by supporting King James and his arbitrary policies. In 1610, the fourth season of James's first parliament met. Despite Bacon's advice to him, James and the Commons found themselves at odds over royal prerogatives and the king's embarrassing extravagance. The House was finally dissolved in February 1611. Throughout this period, Bacon managed to stay in favor of the king while retaining the confidence of the Commons. In 1613, Bacon was finally appointed Attorney General, after advising the king to shuffle judicial appointments. As Attorney General, Bacon, by his zealous efforts, which included torture, he was just described as a really nice man, remember? Which include torture to obtain the conviction of Edmund Beauchamp for treason, raised legal controversies of high constitutional importance, and successfully prosecuted Robert Carr, 1st Earl of Somerset, and his wife, Frances Howard, Countess of Somerset, for murder in 1616. The so-called Princesses' Parliament of April 1614 objected to Bacon's presence in the seat for Cambridge, and to the various royal plans that Bacon had supported. Although he was allowed to stay, Parliament passed a law that forbade the Attorney General to sit in Parliament. His influence over the king had evidently inspired resentment or apprehension in many of his peers. Bacon, however, continued to receive the king's favor, which led to his appointment in March 1617 as a temporary regent of England for a period of a month, and in 1618 as Lord Chancellor. On 12th July 1618, the king created Bacon Baron Veralum in the peerage of England. As a new peer, he then became known as Francis Lord Veralum Bacon, I guess. Bacon continued to use his influence with the king to mediate between the throne and parliament, and in this capacity he was further elevated in the same peerage as Viscount St. Alban. This is the next heading. Bacon's public career ended in disgrace in 1621. After he fell into debt, a parliamentary committee on the administration of the law charged him with 23 separate counts of corruption. His lifelong enemy, Sir Edward Coke, who had instigated these accusations, was one of those appointed to prepare the charges against the Chancellor. To the Lords, who sent a committee to inquire whether a confession was really his, he replied, "My Lords, it is my act, my hand, and my heart. I beseech your Lordships to be merciful to a broken reed." He was sentenced to a fine of £40,000 and committed to the Tower of London at the King's pleasure. The imprisonment lasted only a few days and the fine was remitted by the King. More seriously, Parliament declared Bacon incapable of holding future office or sitting in Parliament. He narrowly escaped undergoing degradation, which would have stripped him of his titles of nobility. Subsequently, the disgraced Viscount devoted himself to study and writing. There seems little doubt that Bacon had accepted gifts from litigants, but this was an accepted custom of the time and not necessarily evidence of deeply corrupt behavior. While acknowledging that his conduct had been lax, he countered that he had never allowed gifts to influence his judgment and, indeed, had on occasion given a verdict against those who had paid him. He even had an interview with King James in which he assured, "The law of nature teaches me to speak in my own defense. With respect to this charge of bribery, I am as innocent as any man born on St. Innocent's Day. I never had a bribe or reward in my eye or thought when pronouncing judgment or order. I am ready to make an obligation of myself to the King." This is apparently 17 April 1621. He also wrote the following to Buckingham: "My mind is calm, for my fortune is not my felicity. I know I have clean hands and a clean heart, and I hope a clean house for friends or servants. But Job himself, or whoever was the justice judge, by such hunting for matters against him as has been used against me, may for a time seem foul, especially in a time when greatness is the mark and accusation is the game. The true reason for his acknowledgment of guilt is the subject of debate, but some authors speculate that it may have been prompted by his sickness, or by a view that through his fame and the greatness of his office he would be spared harsh punishment. He may even have been blackmailed with a threat to charge him with sodomy into confession." The British jurist Basil Montagu wrote in Bacon's defense concerning the episode of his public disgrace: "Bacon has been accused of servility, of dissimulation, of various base motives, and their filthy brood of base actions, all unworthy of his high birth." Yeah. Sounds like a fallacy, right? All unworthy of his high birth. So, apparently, assuming that if you're of quote-unquote high birth, then you cannot do harm, right? Insanity. And incompatible with his great wisdom and the estimation in which he was held by the noblest spirits of the age. It is true that there were men in his own time, and will be men in all times, who are better pleased to count spots in the sun than to rejoice in its glorious brightness. Okay, I'm going to skip the rest of that. When he was 36, Bacon engaged the courtship of Elizabeth Hatton, a young widow of 20. Reportedly, she broke off their relations upon accepting marriage to a wealthier man, Bacon's rival, Edward Coke. Years later, Bacon still wrote of his regret that the marriage to Hatton had not taken place. At the age of 45, Bacon married Alice Barnham, the 14-year-old daughter of a well-connected London alderman and MP. Bacon wrote 2 sonnets proclaiming his love for Alice. The first was written during his courtship and the second on the wedding day, 10 May 1606. When Bacon was appointed Lord Chancellor by special warrant of the King, Lady Bacon was given precedence over all other court ladies. Reports of increasing friction in his marriage to Alice appeared, with speculation that some of this may have been due to financial resources not being as readily available to her as she was accustomed to having in the past. Alice was reportedly interested in fame and fortune, and when reserves of money were no longer available, there were complaints about where all the money was going. Alice Chambers Bunton wrote in her life of Alice Barnham that, upon their descent into debt, she actually went on trips to ask for financial favors and assistance from their circle of friends. Bacon disinherited her upon discovering her secret romantic relationship with Sir John Underhill. He rewrote his will, which had previously been very generous, leaving her lands, goods and income, revoking it all. Bacon's personal secretary and chaplain William Rawley, however, wrote in his biography of Bacon that his marriage was one of much conjugal love and respect, mentioning a robe of honor that he gave to her, and which she wore unto her dying day, being 20 years and more after his death. Alright, so that's half of the page of Francis Bacon, where we got to via the lesson on logic. Not until Francis Bacon hinted at the fundamentals of scientific method, and Isaac Newton used it to integrate the science of physics, was the confident declaration of a universal assumption realized. But I thought we would do Bacon because he's a very influential person in history. So thanks everybody for listening. There are a lot of people in the chat. 8Hawks, Anon, Del, Dan, and Grump, and Hopper, Jane and Jules, Matty Clues, Otto, Tomato, and Vincent. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
I think a new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific